Most people misunderstand the transfer portal. They think it's just recruiting 2.0. It's not. In the business of college football, high school recruiting is venture capital, but the transfer portal is mergers and acquisitions. Traditional recruiting builds a portfolio of speculative assets, teenagers with high ceilings but zero track record. Curt Cignetti turned Indiana around, not by recruiting better, but by applying value investing principles. He stopped overpaying for projected growth and started buying undervalued assets with proven cash flow. To understand why this changed the game, you have to look at the broken math behind the traditional model. Think about a 5-star high school recruit like a seed round startup. You invest massive capital upfront, usually cash in the form of NIL promises and coaching hours, based entirely on a pitch deck. You are betting on what they might become 3 years from now. But like any seed investment, there is a distinct burn rate. A blue chip prospect typically requires an 18 to 24-month runway of physical development and playbook study before they contribute to winning games. During that time, they are a liability on the balance sheet. They consume resources without generating revenue in the form of wins. The risk profile is terrible. Data suggests that roughly 50% of top-rated high school recruits never start a significant number of games at the school that signed them. In business terms, that is a 50% failure rate on your most expensive assets. Blue blood programs like Georgia or Ohio State can afford these losses because their portfolios are diversified. Indiana could not. Yet programs continue to fall into the sunk cost trap because they spent 2 years recruiting a player and paid a premium signing bonus. Coaches feel obligated to play them. Even when the on-field product suffers, they are protecting their ego, not the bottom line. When Cignetti took over Indiana, the program was effectively insolvent. They had the worst winning percentage in FBS history. They didn't have the luxury of a 3-year runway to develop talent. A rebuild suggests you have time to lay a foundation. Cignetti needed a liquidity event immediately. He realized that in a distressed turnaround, you cannot afford to speculate. You need immediate cash flow. This is where the production over potential metric completely changes the valuation model. In the corporate world, potential is just a projection. Production is an audited financial statement. Cignetti stopped investing in the hope that a 17-year-old would turn into a star and started acquiring assets that had already proven they could produce. He values a 3-star transfer with 2 years of solid game tape over a 4-star high schooler with a high ceiling. This approach eliminates the development lag entirely. If a player has produced stats in the Sun Belt or the MAC, the risk of a total zero is almost non-existent. You know exactly what you are buying. You are trading the theoretical possibility of a future superstar for the guaranteed certainty of a competent starter today. For a program like Indiana, that certainty is the difference between a 3-9 season and a playoff berth. But once you stop buying potential, you need a specific strategy to install your new system immediately. In the technology sector, there is a common strategy known as an acquire. This happens when a large company like Google or Facebook buys a failing startup, not because they want the product, but because they desperately want the engineering team. They are purchasing a cohesive unit of human capital that already knows how to work together. Curt Cignetti applied this exact logic to the transfer portal, but he did it in reverse. He didn't just take the job at Indiana, he effectively merged the Indiana brand with the James Madison operating system. When Cignetti arrived in Bloomington, he brought a wave of 13 players and critical staff members with him from JMU. To the casual observer, this looked like a coach playing favorites, or simply filling empty roster spots with familiar faces. But from a management perspective, this was a calculated efficiency play designed to bypass the most time-consuming phase of a turnaround, the installation of culture. Usually a year-one coaching tenure is a wash. The new CEO has to spend the first 12 months teaching 85 employees how to practice, how to meet, and what the new standards of performance look like. It is a massive drain on organizational energy. Cignetti skipped this phase entirely by importing players like linebacker Aiden Fisher and wide receiver Elijah Sarrett. He wasn't just bringing in talent, he was installing middle management. These players acted as on-field project managers. They already knew the complex defensive schemes and the precise tempo of the offensive routes. More importantly, they knew the non-negotiable standards of the organization. When practice started, Cignetti didn't have to stop the drill to explain what relentless effort looked like. The JMU transfers were already doing it. They modeled the behavior, creating immediate peer pressure. If a legacy Indiana player was jogging through a route, they weren't just getting yelled at by a coach. They were being outperformed by a transfer who knew the system better than they did. This forced the existing workforce to either adapt immediately to the new valuation or self-select out of the program. This stands in stark contrast to the strategy deployed by Deion Sanders at Colorado. While both coaches utilized the portal to flip their rosters, their methodology was fundamentally different. Colorado purged their roster and brought in mercenaries, talented individuals from all over the country who had never played together. They had talent, but they had zero shared history. It was a collection of independent contractors. Indiana, by contrast, brought in a platoon. They imported a cohesive unit with existing chemistry and trust. This strategy also served as the ultimate risk mitigation tool. In the transfer portal, scheme fit is a massive variable. You might sign a talented defensive end, but if he doesn't understand your specific blitz packages, his talent is useless. With the JMU transfers, that variable was removed from the equation. Cignetti already had the data. He knew exactly how Aiden Fisher would react to a complex read because he had watched him do it for 2 years. This allowed the coaching staff to focus their limited bandwidth on developing the new assets, knowing that the core of the team was already stable. It was a masterclass in organizational continuity, allowing a brand new staff to operate with the efficiency of a veteran regime from day one. With a culture effectively installed by his aquires, Cignetti turned his attention to the open market to fill the remaining gaps. This is where his strategy shifted from importing culture to exploiting market inefficiencies. The transfer portal creates a unique arbitrage opportunity for smart managers. It allows teams to buy distressed assets, veteran players who are undervalued by their current teams, or the broader market due to bad circumstances, rather than a lack of talent. The most prominent example of this value investing approach is how Cignetti handles the quarterback position. In the modern market, unproven 5-star freshman quarterbacks command 7-figure NIL valuations simply based on hype. It is a bubble market. Cignetti refused to participate in that bidding war. Instead, he looked for undervalued production. Take the acquisition of Fernando Mendoza from Cal. On the surface, Mendoza looked like a risky buy. His metrics at Cal included a dangerously high sack rate, a statistic that usually scares off investors because it suggests a quarterback who holds the ball too long and kills drives. However, Cignetti's staff performed their due diligence. They analyzed the game tape and identified that the red flag metrics were a result of a collapsing offensive line and a poor system, not the player's processing speed. They saw the underlying production, his completion percentage under pressure, and his arm talent that was being obscured by a bad environment. They bet that if they placed this distressed asset into a stable system, his value would skyrocket. They were right. This same philosophy applied to the offensive line rebuild. Indiana didn't go hunting for future NFL first-round draft picks, which are the most expensive assets in the portal. Instead, they acquired veterans like Zen Mikulski and Mike Kadich. These weren't flashy signings. They were the equivalent of blue-chip dividend stocks. They were players with 9+ career starts and PFF grades consistently above the replacement level. Cignetti wasn't looking for a high ceiling, he was buying a high floor. By stacking the line with veterans who had played thousands of collegiate snaps, he minimized volatility. He knew they wouldn't miss assignments, even if they weren't the most athletic players on the field. This creates a fascinating financial dynamic regarding the one-year rental. In traditional recruiting, a one-year player is seen as a bad investment because you lose them quickly. In Cignetti's value investing model, the one-year rental is actually a superior financial instrument. When you acquire a senior quarterback or lineman, you get immediate production wins with zero long-term liability. You pay for the performance, you get the results, and then the scholarship in the NIL salary cap space clears for the next fiscal year. Compare this to the failure at Florida State. FSU paid a premium for quarterback DJ Uiagalelei based on his brand name and physical potential, ignoring the underlying efficiency metrics that showed a history of inconsistency. They bought the hype and paid the price in losses. Indiana paid for the boring, reliable metrics, snap counts, completion percentage, and experience. The result was an infinite return on investment. A freshman might cost $500,000 and yield 0 wins in year 1. A $2 million transfer quarterback who delivers a college football playoff berth fundamentally changes the revenue trajectory of the entire university. By ignoring the potential bubble and buying proven production, Cignetti proved that in the NIL era, the smartest money is often spent on the assets nobody else is looking at. Curt Cignetti proved that the old draft and develop model is obsolete for turning around a distressed brand. In the NIL era, you don't need 5 years to build a team. You can buy a winning portfolio in 5 months if you know how to price the assets. The transfer portal isn't about recruiting anymore, it is about liquidity. If you want more breakdowns on the high-stakes business of college sports, subscribe to Revenue Racers.